Mary Long here, Plein Air Painters Chicago, and thanks for coming tonight. And so we have a couple big announcements that I wanted to make before we get into the critique. But I was really hoping Mark was going to be here. I saw him for a minute. But I'm going to start then another place here to tell you that we have two big announcements, two new programs that the Plein Air Painters Chicago is just launching. And the first one is that we have engaged and asked Steve Puttrick to be our artist in residence for the Plein Air Painters Chicago. And he will hold that title for the year at least. That is something that we have now created with Steve, an artist in residence collaborative, meaning that Steve will be working with all of us and to improve our paintings. And it'll be for the year. We've asked Steve to kind of assess where we are as painters and what we need to do most to be able to actually elevate the art of the Plein Air Painters. Also, a goal for us is that the Plein Air Painters, while I tried to put it in writing, it was edited out, but I wanted us to, be the new Hudson River painters of Illinois. We wanted to be really someone that when people say Plein Air Painters of Chicago, that anybody knows that that's going to be a really good painter. And so the reason for having this artist in residency is really to have us think about that from an educational standpoint. Our Plein Air Painters mission in terms of to paint and to improve our paintings, it's really about that. But also in that then will also be to help sell our paintings, because we're not only just doing the residency, but we've asked Ray Velchek, who's said that he would take on the social media, that when Steve, and I'll have Steve talk for a second about what he's going to be doing, but when Steve comes out on a weekly basis and does a publication for us, Ray will take that information and kind of flip it, refocus it for art collectors. And so if you've put your art in for the Artists in Residency Collective, there's going to be a new Facebook group. And once a week, you can put in a single painting. If Steve chooses it to talk about it, then it will also, at least one of those will be used in our social media. And there will be a link to your profile. So we're hoping that we really elevate the art and increase sales even of the artists and our members here. So Steve, do you want to just talk for a second about what your plan is?
Sure. Thank you, Mary. And I'm really excited about this. I frequently post to Facebook, my personal page, little snippets of insight that I get throughout the day or week, and it's really all art related, and it's geared to improving our ability in creating art. And Mary has given me the opportunity to kind of channel that focus and energy to helping everybody in the Plein Air Painters of Chicago group. I'm super excited about it. I've gotten inquiries. I just posted a little thing on Facebook to my page that I was, honored to receive this. And a lady in Germany said, I'm thinking she's going to sign up to join Plein Air Painters of Chicago. So this is kind of an exciting thing where you just don't have to be in Chicago to be a part of the PAPC anymore. And
can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I'm German. Do you have a contact address or something for that lady?
Oh yeah, Kirsten.
Send it to me.
I will.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's
So
really
once a week, Steve is going to be posting there. Actually, what I should tell you is that tomorrow morning you will get an email that describes and announces this new residency program and the Artist in Residency Collaborative. And then you'll be directed as members, you will be able to go to our website, and we will have a weekly posting from Steve there. So that's where you're going to be seeing that. So, and Lori, when will that be open?
It should be open tomorrow. They would sign into the members portal on the homepage, and then you'll see various things, and ARC will be one of them.
Great. And then and in the email that you'll get tomorrow, there's an outline for what Steve will be doing for the year. So, and also there's also a little questionnaire. It'll take less than 2 minutes to do, but it's giving us a little bit of baseline to use so that we can measure kind of what's happening over the season. So anyway, watch for that. You'll get a lot more from Steve along the way as well. Every Thursday you'll look for it, not this week, but tomorrow definitely look for the email from us. It'll go out at 6:30 in the morning. So
And tomorrow on the website should just be the sort of Steve's welcome introduction too. So
great. Okay. Well, congratulations, Steve, and we're really pleased that you are our artist in residence.
Thank you.
That is exciting. It is very exciting.
And then I want to call on Mark Cleveland. We also, I hope you saw the announcement yesterday in fact, you should have if you have the link to this, because it was in that same email where we announced our new virtual online gallery. And Mark, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. We're excited to offer a new member benefit to all of you to increase your exposure and sales through a web-enabled platform. This is an elite platform, and it's something that if you've been selling or entering in shows, you're familiar with going into online juried shows. This is an extension of that into another application called online gallery shows. So we will until May 24th, we will accept all of your metadata and your paintings. You should scan your paintings in or upload your paintings without frames and do your best to get a good shot. You can check on our iHeart Plein Air video with Errol or some of the other help videos, which are all included in the prospectus, which you'll find when you go through the link that is published both in the email and will be also on the website if it isn't already. So you want to get out there, go through the prospectus, read all the rules. They're pretty straightforward. We've relaxed a lot of the things that we've done in the past because we've been through a pretty tough year and you may not have the inventory that you want to pick through to offer. And we don't want, 52 paintings of the last 2 paintouts. So we want to have a little variety in there. We're giving you an opportunity to mix it up a little bit. So enjoy that, participate, and then once you get it out there, they'll go live about a week after the 24th, and it'll stay through July 5th. And the one thing I really like, the reason we went with this is because it goes right to a shopping cart. So if you choose to sell your work through this vehicle, this application, all people have to do is click on your painting. It takes them right to a shopping cart and gives them the opportunity to buy your painting using a credit card or something like that. So it is truly a virtual expansion of our exposure and capability to increase our sales.
Thanks, Mark. And I think the one other thing I want to add to that is June 5th, it goes live. And what that means is that you want to direct everybody that you know to our website, to www.pleinairpainterschicago. And on the homepage will be the link to our gallery. And so that's how the connections and the sales are going to be made. So the biggest thing is to make sure that people get the link to see your art and all of our work from the Plein Air Painters Chicago. Okay, I guess I should ask, are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions for Mark? Okay,
Sounds good, Mark.
if you want, if you think of some in the evening, during this evening, put them in the chat and maybe we can get back to them that way, or else connect with Mark. Or
I do
send
have a
them,
question.
okay?
Sorry. Does it have to be all plein air?
Yes,
Okay.
only plein air, but
Okay.
it doesn't have to be plein air from this year.
Okay, all right.
But no portraits, no still life, no
Okay.
dogs, no whatever, that aren't plein air.
Okay,
Does it have to be plein air from one of the plein air outings, or can it be a plein
No,
air?
you can, your own plein air.
Okay,
We did say, and I think you'll find this in the prospectus, that because Plein Air Magazine also talks about this, we did say plein air inspired. Now, what that means is that if you are outside, and in a way, I don't want to tell you this, but we're going to do it anyway, that if you were outside and you took a photograph and then you painted from that photograph, and it was only your photograph, not something that you took offline and wanted to paint it, but that we would, for this time, we would accept it. So that it was, and just for this, because we know that people don't have inventory, it also might allow you to put in a larger painting. Or something along that line. So I would say, if you would, try to keep it to plein air, but we are going to go along with plein air inspired for this show that will start June 5th and goes to July 5th.
The other thing you want to keep in mind, Mary, you bring up the size thing. So you're going to have to ship this to somebody. The shipping will come to you to do within 7 business days of the acceptance of your order. So you're going to want to think about how big of a painting do you really want to include. All my stuff, for instance, is 12 by 12. The biggest I would consider is 12 by 16. You're probably looking at, $30 to ship that then. So you want to build that into the cost of your painting, but, plan on shipping your work to someone who buys it. So.
I have
Yeah.
a quick question. Is this
Okay.
the only one that we will do? The only online exhibit we will do?
For this
You would
year.
ask that.
I did.
Yeah, we talked about doing something at the end of the year in conjunction with the palette and chisel, our year-end event. What do you call it, Mary? I'm sorry.
Our annual, you're close,
PAPC
annual.
exhibition.
Yeah, we were thinking exactly that we might do it in tandem with it so that people could also sell online and not just come to the palette. But that's to TBD. And I think we've never done this before. So we will, we'll see how it goes. We thought we'd see what kind of sales we get and if it's worthwhile. We do have some other exhibits that we'll be doing during this year, more pop-up kinds of things, but we'll see how it goes.
So get out and read the prospectus. That's probably the first thing you want to do. Read the, we've made it pretty clear and tried to put as much helpful information as we could. All right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Go ahead and put them in the chat or send them to Mark directly, and then we can get on. So I'm going to pass this over. We were thinking about who else we wanted this year for guest artists, and Richard Laurent was one of the names that kept coming up, partly because when we see his paintings that come in, they're absolutely amazing. And when we think about the guest artists, we've held this thought that a guest artist should not only have the street cred of being in galleries and being someone acknowledged as an artist, but also a teacher. We want to make sure that our guest artists are teachers for us, and so Richard does that as well. And maybe, I know, Richard, you're going to say a few things and maybe give us a little bit of your background rather than me kind of try to do that. And then as I hand this over to you, then Robin and Lori Robin's going to move the paintings for you from Facebook, if that's okay. And I'm going to put myself on mute. So anyway, thank you so much for doing this, Richard.
Thank you, Mary. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you, Mark. Thank you, Steve. This is a great group. we have going. I'm going to start out with 3 words: on plan air. My good friend, who's a French teacher, corrected me and told me that's the way you say on plan air. So that's what we're doing out there. And this leads me to, before I start talking about process, I just want to say a few things. I didn't know I was going to be talking about my background, but it'll be very brief. I teach at Columbia College. I've been a practicing professional artist probably since 1991, 92. And I did my first on plein air painting in Door County as part of the competition in 2008. So that's when I became aware of what this was all about. I've since learned a lot of things from a lot of different people, and I'm going to name a few names here. Steve, the idea of doing, studies and working with design, and Clayton, the master of edges, Scott Tallman Powers. He caught me right off the bat. I was teaching this in class. It was about tangents. And I came to the critique and I said, oh, damn, I've got a tangent. And he called me out on that. And I thought, okay, all right. So what we're really talking about here in terms of working and I've done gallery shows. I do this social justice art initiative with my lovely wife, Cheryl Jefferson. She's the executive director. And we have been taking these exhibitions around the country since 2013. I'm going to be doing a solo show in Austin in about 4 weeks. So I'm a little nervous about all of those things, but we're going to be trucking the work down there, and it'll be about 25 paintings from this social justice initiative. So that's another world for me. And I have other worlds. As some of you know, I work as a political cartoonist, and I teach illustration and some other things too. So I've worn different hats, and it's taken me places that I've enjoyed going, for sure. I mean, having a life as an artist for all of you it's a special experience. So this brings me back to the subject of tonight, which is I used to teach using a series of keys, right? So since knowing these different players, I've reordered everything that I'm working with. So I always begin with the idea of intent. And that's really, really important in terms, before any of the technical issues come into play. What is your intention as an artist when you go out to the field? Now, I have felt many times that plein air painting is like going fishing. You have your gear and you go out, you don't always catch a fish. There are moments when you feel like you are working, at the right hand of God, and then 5 minutes later, there's a 50-mile-an-hour wind and it's starting to rain. So I have literally had a painting blow down the road, and I've never seen it after that point. So that was in Door County, by the way. So we begin with intent, your intention in going out to the field. And I think Steve touched on this too, which was about the design of your work. And I like to think about it in terms of having a concept when I'm going to go out. I'm learning to look at the list and see where the venue is going to be. And I begin, if I have a chance to drive by, I'll do that. And I begin thinking, what do I want to say about this particular subject? For example, I was in North Pond last week, and I didn't end up painting that gorgeous view of the skyline looking south. That's what everybody does. I noticed that somebody had painted the other direction, which was the Elks building, which is, by the way, if you haven't been inside the Elks building, it's gorgeous. It's a Greek temple. the second thing I wanted to talk about is the 800-pound gorilla in the room for us, for a lot of us, and that is perspective. I know, you know, that's a word that strikes terror in the hearts of all of my students at Columbia College. But perspective is, as someone explained to me one time, the geometry of drawing. It's the structure that we use to begin to build our painting. Now, again, this goes back to intent. If you're working toward realism and you want to build something that looks like reality, you have to apply these principles. Now, if you're going out to the field and you say, I'm not going to work in that space at all, I'm going to do something from another place entirely. I'm going to do a cubist piece, or I'm going to do something that's very metaphorical, and I'm going to float to some other place. You have to make that decision. Am I going to try to dial this into a certain reality-based viewing, or am I just going to let it go off the road, go rogue? And you have to make that decision. If you were going to become a realistic painter or an abstract painter, you'd still have to make a decision, something like that. You would reach that fork in the road where you could go realism or abstract. And that's something that only you can decide. You know, I'm not going to give you any rules that you must trust or fail. However, there are some things that we do that will guarantee that our composition fails if we are working toward that 3D space. Now, within the realm of perspective, we also have, I mean, this is constructing reality in 2D space. But if we also have to consider space going back, you know, deep space. You know, what happens, you know, with atmosphere. Now, I kind of chuckle sometimes when people talk about this, because in certain different environmental instances, you're going to see a different way that aerial perspective operates. For example, if you're in the West, my wife had a sabbatical in Taos, New Mexico, and it was great. You could stand on a hill and look 60 miles away, and things were apparently, to my eye, crystal clear. And I'm looking for this sort of gray bluing of everything that we get in the Midwest because of the atmosphere. The atmosphere here is denser or something. There's more water in the air or something. So out there, you could look for 100 miles and it would be crystal clear. So you have to take that sort of thing into account when you go out to paint. As I said before, for me, en plein air is like juggling 3, 4, or 5 balls in the air. And sometimes you're going to drop a ball on the way. When you're out there working, and I know most of you probably feel this way, there are so many things happening, and then people are coming up to you. And right now we have the masking and everything, and some people have them and some people don't. I was painting at North Pond, and 2 bikers came up, and I didn't have my mask on at that moment. And we're talking and, you know, just chatting. And one of the guys just casually says, oh, I've had COVID twice and I haven't been vaccinated. So I'm thinking, how do I get out of this situation? So that interrupts your focus, I think, when you're painting in the field. So that's the 800-pound gorilla in the room, getting your design and your perspective working for you. The design of the composition, which Steve has spoken about numerous times, you know, we start with some of these basic rules that we all know, right? Rule of thirds and so on. Rhythmic lines, diagonals, and masses. And, you know, connecting your masses is one of the rules of the road for a lot of painters that are doing this. That's all important stuff as you begin to finesse your work. I'm not sure that we're not doing field studies and then we come back to the studio. I'm not a purist when it comes to you know, deciding whether on plein air should be done on location only, or, you know, I don't care, really, frankly. I am concerned about being a slave to your photographs, for example. Now, we all have to rely on some visual memory when we come back. We're not working out of the Renaissance when artists had perfect memory, visual memory. So we need this, but we don't have to work slavishly from a photograph. And that's sort of my gift to you tonight is don't feel free to go off road and to make things work for you. Then there are all those other things that we always talk about that are relevant and sort of fuzzy at times. Value, you know, the degree of light and dark that you're working with. If you're doing a nocturne, it's going to be a very dark palette. Edges, you know, I love the term sfumato, and that's sort of smoky edges, roughly translated, very roughly. But that has to do with softening your edges as you go back in space in certain circumstances. And you can only figure this out, I think, by practicing, by going out and doing it. And then you have the temperature issues of the paint on your palette. And finally, I throw in as number 7 on my list now, patterns, looking for patterns that I can pick up on when I'm painting. Diagonals, especially when I see a diagonal shadow, for example, I say, there's something I can work with. How can I use that? How can I bring that in somewhere else? So I spoke with David LaFell a few years ago, and he said to me, a painting is only as good as its weakest element. So that's pretty final. I mean, I tell this to my students all the time. Your illustration is only as good as its weakest element, which means that we have to kind of review as we go and say, okay, my perspective is not working here. I've got all these other things working, all the other, you know, the motors are turning, but in the case of en plein air, I have discovered that God is not in the details. In fact, it can be the road to perdition. So on that happy note, let's get going here, and let's take a look at everybody's work, and we can have a discussion too. So should I know who this is, or does it matter? Or
This is Kirsten.
Kirsten.
Kirsten, and Kirsten's here.
Hi, Kirsten. I remember this day. This is when I almost froze my fingers off. It was one of those days where you just say, I got to get in and I got to get out. Now, some of you probably didn't feel that way, but now I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, first two things that come to mind are, wow, it's hard to paint a bike in any scene. I did a painting of Florence one time with a girl riding a bike. And that was I laid awake nights worrying about how that was going to work perspective wise. You've done a pretty good job here of doing that. Is that your bike, or is that somebody you were painting?
This is the bike of the painter standing in front of me.
Oh, okay.
He recognized it, actually. I'm sorry, I'm new, so I don't remember his name.
It's Ray Velchek.
Ray, yes,
Yeah.
Ray's bike. I've tried to paint Ray's bike,
It's
and
hard.
then I took Ray's bike out of my painting. So that's how I feel about that. But when you know you have your statue in the background, and you have this composition that's really pretty complicated right off the bat. I mean, you're working with, they say, you know, these are not my rules, but they say that 3 elements are often stronger than 2. So you have this, you know, pyramid working for you in this composition. You might think, now all of my suggestions are taking into account that you're out there in the field and you're having all of these forces acting on against you, right? A few are for you, but anytime we have wind and we have marauding kids and all kinds of things, we have to deal with that. So you have this diagonal cutting through the composition, and you know, your statue is coming dangerously close to being just sort of dead center in your composition. You might be able to strengthen it if you just shifted that a little bit.
Okay.
Second thing, yeah, feel free to jump in here. The other thing I'm thinking is, I know for a lot of you, you're very brave. You will tackle anything. And I'm thinking sometimes it's good to simplify the composition. And I'll tell you why. If your composition is too detail heavy, it's literally going to tire the eye. I mean, there's physics involved. And, you know, we don't want to do that with our audience, right? But you got some nice elements going on here, and you are fearless in terms of tackling this subject too. I think you know, whether any of you consider what you're doing a study for another painting, or whether this is a finished piece, that's entirely up to you. You've done some nice things with the with your. Are you using a palette knife?
Yeah. In the back, it's a thin wash, and in the front, it's a palette knife.
Yeah. I think texture is always intriguing to your audience. People want to see hand painted stuff, so that's a good thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to try to stay on track here. So. Okay, who's next?
Next is juniors. Robin, when you pull them up, there's a little arrow. You can just go use the arrow when you go to the next one. Whoops. Up.
Yeah, I'm gonna recognize some of these places. I'm not at every event, but this I was considering painting. I was actually standing right here, or maybe up the hill, and I was thinking, is this something I should be painting right now? And my answer was no, only because there was so much going on. And if Junior were here, I would say, what's going on in the foreground? Often it's the foreground that defeats the landscape painter. Now, you know, whether you consider it a weak foreground or a lack of flow, there's some nice elements happening here, and he's got a really interesting kind of impasto going on the building that, you know, I didn't see that kind of light. It was late in the day, and it wasn't a highlight like that. It's really the beginning. If I were him, I would begin to work with the foreground, and to me, the foreground seems a little bit soft in terms of brushwork. It might be the other way around. You might have a little bit more, you might have a little bit sharper edges in the foreground, and then as you work back, you get into this soft brush technique. So anyway, moving right along.
Richard, quick question. So would you move forward and just focus on the building then, and eliminate the foreground if it was just a ball field or something?
I would have moved up the hill. That's where I was standing, and it was much more interesting from the top of the hill. But this created a compositional void, which you need when you're there. You have to solve that. Now, this comes under the you know, the subject of well, here's a quote from Degas: "Even in front of nature, one must compose." So this is the problem that you have to solve as a painter. What do I do to make this a more interesting painting? Everything from the middle ground back is quite strong. We have another issue too. In general, when we're painting in the city, we have sharp edges on buildings, and we have soft edges on the foliage, the trees. So this creates a need. You know, I don't want to get into Carlson too much, but there are people who are more knowledgeable than me about his work. But he was talking about edges in terms of leaves, branches, you know, mountains, for example. I had a painting with a mountain running through the back. It was a metaphorical painting. And I had a little soft edge on the mountain. And then I read his book and said, no, 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 you've got to have a sharp edge for that mountain. It's almost a silhouette if it's at a great distance. So I said, okay, next painting I do, we'll do it. By the way, his tree was quite well done, actually. Painting all of these details is it's yeah, I remember I still have this painting of this L stop on my easel. I'm trying to figure out how to save it, basically. I'll give you a little hint on what I did. You can have things in the foreground coming up from below the picture, the edge of the picture. I've seen this done, you know, if you raise your point of view a little bit and you're looking down slightly. That's what I attempted to do with the Argyle painting. So next on our
Say that
list.
again. What was that, Rich? How do you
Okay. Okay, if you raise your point of view, if you could see this as a camera, you're the filmmaker and you're on a dolly, you raise the dolly up a little bit, you could have some branches or trees coming in from the bottom of the painting. If it is logical, that's one way of dealing with the foreground. I did this with a woods painting one time. I was losing the foreground. I didn't have anything it didn't make sense in the foreground. So now this is whose is this?
This is mine, Shannon.
Oh, hi, Shannon.
Hey.
Boy, I think you know, I was right out there and I rendering your statue. It's beautifully done. And this is a hard subject. It's got flat planes, which are not necessarily hard to do, but to get them when you're outside and it's 38 degrees and the wind is blowing, that's a challenge. Now, what I would do, and don't hit me for this, I would make her a little more heroic. Now where you were in the park, this might be exactly what the statue looks like. I think it's a beautiful painting of that statue. And I think that in essence is the painting. So as you move back in space, you've got a hint of the Hilton in the background and the other buildings, and you've softened that a little bit. I guess what's going on right behind your statue, and that's framing the statue, which is great, but it gets a little bit soft in the middle ground. It's not a bad thing necessarily, but again, when you go out there and you set your easel up, you want to think for a few minutes. What is my intention? What is, as Steve would say, who is the hero? I love that term, Steve. What's the hero? Who's the hero? Well, obviously it's the statue here. So what do I do to play that up? I would love to see, you know, the cropping on this much tighter on the statue. So that became the painting. I just love your statue, as if you can't tell.
Thanks.
So watch your perspective lines a little bit. And I know when we're out there and we're painting, some people have watched me using a piece of cardboard as a straight edge. I don't think that's cheating. I think it's just, okay, I'll get into the detail here, the brass tack here. And this may not be that important if you're selling this as a plein air painting. But the wall itself, the left side of the wall, given the perspective of the steps, would be a little bit higher, be going up a little bit. You want to emphasize, sometimes you want to exaggerate the perspective too. So nice piece, nice piece.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, here's this. This just works on a lot of different levels for me. Who did this?
This is Mark Cleveland.
Oh, Mark. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
This is almost like, now this is a plein air painting. It's got all the stuff going on here that, you know, just people always get into arguments too. Should there be figures in my painting, or should it just be? I'll tell you a quick story about that. I did a whole series of paintings using the comfy chair, basically. I used to see these chairs when I took the train west to New Mexico, and they would be perched on the top of a hill, and they would be somebody's big easy chair from their rec room or something. And one day a woman came up to me and she said, please don't put anyone in those chairs. I like to put myself in the picture. So there's a group of people that want the scene, but they don't want the activity, I guess. So you always have that option. I think to make this an even stronger piece, I think I'd go in somewhere around the center of interest, and I'd just put a couple little spots of really intense color.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of orange or something. And your center of for those of you who are looking for the center of interest, that will be the lightest, most contrasty place in your painting. So nice.
I was struggling a little bit with when I paint outside, the colors appear so bright, and then I get home and they seem so dull, and I'm like, you know, because I'm in full sun, and then I get home and I'm looking at it, it's going, that's not nearly as bright as it seemed when I was mixing my palette.
Great comment, Mark. I meant to bring that up, and that is so true. I have brought paintings back that I thought were like blowing out the audience, and they were like really dull when I get them back into the studio. I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back in and try to adjust everything. I'm afraid that that wonderful brush stroke and line and everything that you've gotten might be lost. Is this an oil painting or a watercolor?
Yes, it's a 12 by 12 oil on a panel.
It's very nice. You've got this one, upright right there that just brings me right in. This is a case where the perspective all works. It just looks right. It feels right, and it has that sort of artistic feel to it, meaning you can be off a little bit if you want, but you're saying to the audience, this is a painting. This is not a photograph. So nice job, Mark.
Thank you, sir.
Wow. This is interesting. You were out in was this Lincoln Park?
Yes, Grant Park. It's the Lincoln statue in Grant Park.
Now, tell me what your intent was in doing this painting. What was your intention?
So, I wanted to show the winter sort of landscape with the bare trees and the snow. It was when we had all that snow in February. So I took some photos of the park. And so, I wanted to show the winter, winter landscape.
Yeah. Well, again, we're talking, I love, I think you painted the snow very, very, very well with this. It's very subtle in the way the light kind of takes you up to the statue. I want to know more about the statue when I look at your painting. I don't know what size this is. Is it like 9 by 12 or?
It's 16 by 20.
It's a little bit larger. Okay.
Yeah, it's slightly bigger.
And I would say that you're painting realism up to the base of the statue, and then you kind of it's expressive the way you painted the trees. There's a lot of rhythm to the trees. It looks to me like you had a great time painting those trees.
Yeah, no, I did. I've been working on how to, do trees when there's a whole mass of them, and you don't want to obviously paint every tree. So
yeah,
sort of, but you just still want to show that there's buildings sort of behind the trees, so you don't want to sort of make it all disappear. It's sort of in one solid mass. So
I think you should play a game. Do you have Photoshop?
my husband does, but
I would take Abraham Lincoln and I would try making him different sizes and place him inside this composition and just move it around and see what happens. This is for a future painting you're going to do. This has nothing to do with changing this painting necessarily, but just to see, does that change the whole nature of what this is about? It's a little bit, you know, what I was saying before, you have to find a way of dealing with the foreground if you're going to work, you know, this way. And maybe just adding a few more branches or something would sort of, it's calling out to me to connect the foreground with the middle ground some way.
Okay.
It's like cut right across, you know, horizontal. And it cuts me off from all the stuff that's going on. And the sky is beautifully done. I mean, yeah. So just play with that and find some reason to bring something into your foreground. I won't say what you should do, but you know, there's and this is where you have to, you know, sometimes invent a little bit on reality. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
Watercolor, which is not my medium, but I'm always very in awe of the watercolor folks. This has some really nice, you know, passages. I think as a study, it's really beautiful. Maybe a little undershadow under this bush over here or something. I don't want to get like nitpicky or anything, but I think you've done a really nice study. Again, I would try just cropping a little bit differently in Photoshop or something to see what would happen if you brought the right edge in a little bit closer to this. Now see, you had me at the statue. It's so beautifully done. And then you get to this light source and that's out of perspective. So then that's where you lose me. All through here, this is just beautifully done. And then I come up here and I
No, Rich, we can't see your cursor.
Oh, that's all right.
Okay. Just so you know.
I can see. No, the light pole on the right side. You're losing the reality of your study when you lose the perspective on your light pole. That's all I'm trying to say. I'm holding my hand over the light pole, just looking at the 2/3 of the painting and thinking, well, it's just, you know, I think it's a really nice study. Thank you. Oh, I've been waiting for this. I'll tell you why. I think Lori is one of the best starters of any painter I've seen.
It's just the finish that doesn't work.
And I'm not taking away from anything else. I'm just saying when she starts a painting, I come over and say, damn. So the reason I'm laughing is because I've painted this corner and this is now a nocturne with another subject. I more or less obliterated the original painting. I went through like 6 renditions of why this painting of mine did not work. So you're much closer to a successful painting. And the only thing I would suggest is you have this channel running from the sky down. And I just wish there were some branches crossing over, creating some lyrical crossover. So
the branches across from the tall, the lantern part?
Well, or branches from the tree or some leaves or something that come out and almost like lyrical thing that connects this so that my eye goes up the ramp, goes up the tree, crosses over to the post and comes to the, you know, the light post and comes back down. As it stands, I go over there and it's all very well organized. And this, you know, this is what happens when, this is our right brain. We're always fighting our right brain because it's always trying to organize the details. And sometimes you just have to be a little bit lyrical. And maybe a little branch that sort of started to come out with a couple leaves would just do that trick. It's a nice painting. And I saw your photo too. There was a little more light on the right side of the painting.
Yeah, there's more branches too. So I mean, there's that branch at the bottom that really comes way across. I didn't know.
Yeah,
Is that
nature.
what you mean? Like
Yeah,
make a branch kind of go from the right side across to the
exactly.
left?
Yeah,
Okay.
nature has solved that for you. All you have to do is follow nature. But I think you've got a really good painting going here. One thing I wanted to mention to you, sometimes, well, I don't know how you feel about going to the darkest darks, if you want to push those or not.
I like that idea.
I had what I would call a discussion with David LaFell years ago about shadows, he wanted me to paint opaque shadows, and I didn't want to. So he made me. He took a brush and he just obliterated my peaches. And I never forgot the lesson. But I was just thinking about the way the shadow looks in your photograph. It's kind of it's a mask that sort of defines that whole area. And maybe if that was a little bit darker, I'll suggest one other thing for you too. Now, I know you have more plein air experience painting than I do, but when I started going out and I started working with raw umber, burnt umber, ultramarine blue and so on, I found that sometimes it's better to put a little blue into the shadows, warm light, cool shadows. Just, even though it may not be there, it's a way of sort of offsetting some of the red browns that you have in your painting. It's a nice combination. And that also ties it in with the sky too, very subtly. That's all I'm going to say.
No, that's good, because my problem I kept finding was I was trying to be too accurate with the stone, and then I put the blue shadows and I'd think, oh, it's messing up the stone, but I should have been just braver and just, plowed ahead with darker shadows,
Well, there's so many good things about this painting. I'm looking with more detail now. The stone fence on the left, it's hazing a little bit because there's a strong light above. That was really nice. And the way the shadow cuts across the up ramp, and then this little bit of light on this stone piece on the right here. That's just really, really nice stuff. Just keep doing that. It's great.
I have a question though. On the light post, I softened the edges. Are they too soft? I wasn't sure whether that should be a sharp thing or, I didn't want it to compete with the stairs.
Yeah. It's in this case, you could make some of the edge a little bit sharper. Maybe as you go up toward the undershadow of that post, but I think it's okay. I don't have a problem with it. I think, I think I might define this lighter area on the right side a little bit more. Because that
was the right side of the post?
On the right side of that giant monument behind the tree.
Oh, okay.
In the distance.
Okay.
That's where I ran into trouble on my painting. It became too dark, too dense on the right side, and it started to weigh, it was out of balance with everything else that was going on. So
lighten a little bit the
you've got a little bit of sky up there.
Okay, gotcha.
And you could bring in a couple more sky holes just to open that up a little bit. Because it's kind of pulling everything to that right side. See your brightest green? It's right on the edge. This
Okay.
is always something that I'm trying to deal with in my own painting, and that is sometimes the sun is up to the right and the leaves are brighter, and they're brighter toward the edge of the canvas. But you have to override that sort of, you know, logic and say, well, wait a minute, where's my center of interest? What is this about? So I think it's a beautiful piece.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Oh, this is a sepia. Yeah, who does these sepia paintings? Are you here?
That's Linda Brown.
Oh, Linda. Okay, sure. Is this an underpainting? Is she here tonight, or?
I think she is. Linda?
Hi, Linda.
No, she's not here.
She's not here. Well, I don't really have too much to say about this. It works at this level, and I would like to see her take it, you know, beyond the sepia underpainting. Live dangerously, Linda, wherever you are. Okay, let's move on. Up. Oh, I know where this is. Okay, this was an interesting morning, and I was really thankful that I didn't paint this because this, you know, this is very imposing when you're painting a structure like this and you have all these elements. She's here tonight, right? Yes. Anyway.
Sorry. I'm writing the notes you gave me, Rich. So let me get back to my post and tell me who this.
Okay.
Yes, I am here.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. So the comments I made earlier about perspective, that's what you need to work on here.
Yes.
Get a good book on perspective and just start figuring out how these shapes work in space. And the shapes are they're all geometric shapes. When you look at this, you break it down into, you know, a dome and cubes and rectangles and so on. And the way they go back in space. Now here's a tip I always give my students. When you're working with 2-point perspective, which I think this is, and it's a few other points thrown in too, but you have 2 vanishing points. I always tell them when they're doing an architectural structure to either change their point of view slightly so that they're looking at the edge of the building on the top or the corner of the building at the bottom, but don't try to do both because it will create kind of a distortion in the perspective. So that's all I'm going to tell you tonight. Just get a good book on perspective and start working on that, because that's so key to what you do in the field. I think Clayton mentioned if you have a dilemma, you take your brush and you hold it up against a line going back and you see what the angle is and you just copy that angle. That's the easiest way to sort of get perspective into your paintings. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice strong piece. Who did this?
I did. Can you hear me?
Who is I?
Howard Crystal.
Oh, hi, Howard.
Hi.
Yeah. This is a real strong piece. What size is the canvas?
I think it's 12 by 16. And it's gouache.
Oh, it's gouache. One of my favorite illustrators working today works in gouache, Bill Mayer out of Atlanta. What did you want to say with this piece?
It was near sunset, and I was just struck by the effect of the light on that dry grass.
Yeah, I can feel the emotion of your feeling here, which is a good thing. You want to think about not just capturing the Kodachrome moment of something, because this is something we all struggle with as painters. You know, the perfect image of something or other. And we all want to bring something that's unique as a painter to what we're doing. So sometimes you can find one thing in the composition that might be your centerpiece. It might be a single tree, for example, or it might be a building in the distance, or as we will probably see later, it might be an animal or two. So this goes back to your intention and how you want to paint toward realism or away from realism. So that's about the best I can give you tonight on this, except you want to think about if you have, let's say, a field of wheat, there is a structure to that. There's actually a side and a front and a top plane. These are all planes that reflect light differently. And that helps to add structure to what's going on here. So, for example, if this is roughly a field, the area at the top might be like a pizza wedge of lighter color, which would help to define the plane that's facing the sky. Also, one thing I want to mention, if you're not a tonalist as a painter, you know, the grass isn't always green and the sky isn't always blue. That's all I'm gonna say on that subject. There are ways of sort of mixing color to sort of tie the color palette together. I think that's why a lot of the painters in the 30s were doing these green skies, blue-green skies, using cobalt instead of ultramarine and so on. So anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This has a lot of interesting qualities to it. It's very moody, and you've taken a lot of. Was this North Pond?
Yes, it was. This is Sharon.
Oh, Sharon, hi.
Hi.
Yeah, this has a lot of nice things going on. You know, I always have a dilemma painting buildings in the distance. I don't really want to paint them as sharp-edged knives sticking up, because that kind of kills, you know, the impressionist, you know, feel of the thing. But now you have to. I'm a little confused about where the light is coming from here. It doesn't cause me a lot of consternation, but I'm looking at how. I know you were looking at everything very carefully. I can tell that you were studying how the water was moving and so on, or you wouldn't have painted it this way, right?
Yeah, this photograph is a little bit darker than the real thing. I kept trying to get it right, but because that John Hancock building is so dark, it kept throwing everything else off when I tried to photograph it. And it's even that John Hancock building isn't as dark as it appears here, but it just kept playing with the light on everything else when I tried to photograph it. But the light's kind of coming across on the brightness of the bushes, the pink and the yellow there. The light was kind of hitting right there.
Okay, so it's coming from the left.
Yeah.
And it's sort of
from the east. Yeah.
From the east. Okay, so oh, you were there in the morning?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You want to think about keeping your color clean, and I only say that not that this is dirty color, but like the area around your buildings in the distance, like you could be grading that down toward a lighter, you know, gray white or something, and just make that a kind of a clean transition going from the cloud downward. It can get brighter as you go into those little spaces between buildings, but just make that consistent, because it's I mean, I realize you have kind of a moodiness here, but I don't know if you did that on purpose or whether it just happened, you know. Sometimes we have, and when I say that, sometimes we have happy accidents. And I know I've had a few in my life. I wish I had more, but it's always wonderful when you lay a brush stroke down and it just works. And for all of you, you know, there are some nice brush strokes in this painting. when you get a brush stroke, don't go in and try to fix it, right? Just let it live and move on. You might come back 6 months later and you might say, oh my God, I need to do this. And you can start oil in on your canvas. I'm assuming this is oil, and you can work on that. You know, it doesn't have to be set in stone the minute you walk out of the park. Again, I'm not a purist, so you have that option, right? So I think this has a lot of nice attitude to it. So
Thank you.
you just watch your shadows and try to create some diagonals with your shadows that are very clear, and that will strengthen your painting in general. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
There it is. Yeah. You want to go back one slide for a second? Can you do that? Oh, there it is, the behemoth. And that's what everyone was facing when I confronted them. And that's a tall order. Okay, you can go forward. So now, who are we with?
Barbara, it's here. I'm here.
Hi, Barbara.
Hi, how are you?
Barbara, yeah. Again, this is a perspective issue for you.
Yes.
And it's all, you know, whenever you think that is not working for you, take your straight edge, bring one or your brush and just lay it up against the edge of what you see in front of you. You know, the old hold it out straight and your arm out straight rather. Lock your arm and just look at the angle of whatever it is you're drawing and just copy that angle. And that will give you the basic structure of these multifarious boxes. And also you have, you know, this is a very difficult subject. I painted the Chicago Club with a round window like this. That's a tall order. You have to really, and you've done a good job of finding that ellipse that forms those things. So I would say that is your main concern at this moment in time. Just
especially on the left side. That when I looked at the picture, I thought, oh no, I'm gonna get nailed for that.
oh, and but I think you've added your own touch. You know, the actual scene was kind of gray, just
Yeah,
gray.
it was.
And you've brought all this color to it, and I think that's one of your strong suits as an artist. So just practice your perspective. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, who do we have?
Dorothy Mason.
Hi, Dorothy.
Hi.
You don't have to sound so resigned. Dorothy, we're so glad to have you. This is a watercolor?
Oil.
This is oil. This is an oil wash. And you've done this. There's this wonderful thing that's going on in the trees down here. You know, if I'd have to.
I used a paintbrush that was old and crusty.
Well, yeah, I'm going to go back to my old and crusty brushes, pay them another visit. But there you are. You have the behemoth. I'm going to call this subject, and you have to make it work. And you're saying, I got to get all of this in here. And you kind of left part of it unfinished.
Yep.
Which, you know, okay. That's why I initially thought it might be a watercolor, but someone who works in oil like watercolor intrigues me.
I started out my life as a watercolorist.
Ah, well, come on over.
I love working in oil, but I do approach oils like a watercolorist.
Well, I actually, in my initial stages of oil, I worked very, very thin. And some people have accused me of working in watercolor. And I say, well, that's the way I work. So be it. So anyway, there's a lot of attention to the details here. And my gosh, there are so many details. And you've done a pretty good job of capturing that. You lose the perspective in this little foreground structure.
Yeah, I know.
That's where it goes. That's where you lose it. So again, what I'm telling everybody, and also, you know, I'm going to go back to the grass is not always green and the sky is not always blue. Maybe the sky in a different context would tie all of this together. I don't know. I mean, you have nothing to lose with a study you're working on, right?
Right.
These things are never that precious. I've learned one thing, and that is to destroy a bad painting wherever I can. I'm talking about my own stuff, right?
Sure.
I'm not running around burning other people's paintings. I had a workshop once with Diane Raff. Does anybody know who she is? Palette and Chisel. She passed away a few years
Yes.
ago.
I remember
Yes.
Diane, yes.
And we went out and painted some, I don't know. It was a you know, a wood place, and there was a torrent. It was a downpour. Everything turned yellow. The sky turned yellow. We came back. Some very famous painters, I won't even mention here. We all took our paintings. She built a big fire pit, and we threw our paintings into the fire pit. So we had a ritual burning of the paintings, which was very liberating. And there were some good painters too. So, you know, sometimes you get it, sometimes you don't. But you've got some interesting stuff going on here. You just have to keep forging ahead. I think there's a good painting in this painting. So keep working.
You think I should keep working on this painting or use this as a reference for another painting?
I think in 30 minutes, you could make this a good painting.
Okay.
Just by correcting some of the perspective and, you know, thinking about your intent.
Because I didn't do anything. I decided not to touch it. I just did what I did that day and took a picture of it.
Well, it's got some good energy because you did that. You know, we've many of the better painters have had this discussion about, should I go back in and retouch everything when I get back? You know, and some of the painters say no, it is a plein air painting, leave it that way and just move on. So
I don't follow that, but I also think that I need to divorce myself from being outside looking at it before I can fix the painting.
yeah, that's good. I mean, your intention is there, so just follow your heart.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Ooh. There, okay, whose painting is this?
It's Robin's, but she can't find the unmute apparently.
Oh, okay, I know. Okay, Robin. Robin, there's some really nice stuff going on in here. First of all, it looks like an oil painting. It seems funny that I say that, but I've had someone looking at my painting in a gallery with a magnifying glass to make sure it wasn't a giclée print. So I kind of learned a lesson that day. So anything that sort of personalizes your painting, and I think you have a very, very strong, you know, the tree is really, maybe that's your hero here. I'm not sure, but it's very, very strong in this painting.
I really am bothered by the 3 trees in a row. I deviated from the real photo and the feeling, and I think I got carried away.
Because of their the even spacing, or what?
Well, they're kind of like 3 meatballs there or something.
3 meatballs on the side of spaghetti. Well, no, it's I don't know what this little thing is in the distance. I would take that out. It seems extraneous to what's going on here. Is that a structure of some kind?
That's the Elks. That's the Elks.
Well, no, I know your dome is the Elks. What's that other thing across the street? Is that an apartment building or something?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, something.
I just take that out. It just, you know, it's so much stronger with, you know, I think this has a lot of spirit, has a lot of, you know, I'm kind of partial to the brush stroke. This area over on the right side that you have going up into the tree on the right, Beautifully painted.
Thank you.
I think Mr. Steve inspired you there. I know he did me when painting that way. Yeah, and there's a little break in my logically. Okay, there's kind of a shadow cast that should be cast across the pathway, and it doesn't really happen for me. That would be a way of kind of connecting your masses a little bit better. Maybe it wouldn't be as dark as the grove, but I do like the idea that you're doing this dark underpainting for the undershadows on the bushes. That really grounds them. So I think this is successful. I would probably look at that little tree in the distance. No, it isn't quite, there isn't quite the finesse in the way it's painted. So maybe it could be a little bit, you know, softer and sketchier, and not in. Steve, if you're out there, how would she paint the branches in the tree in the distance? Would she, you know, would she use her palette knife, or? I don't know if Steve is here right now, but that was the logical source. I would try to make them more, you know, less heavy. Just kind of might use the edge of my palette knife. You're painting with a palette knife, I trust?
Sometimes, yeah.
And I would just make those branches on the distance much thinner, so they just, you know, this is part of aerial perspective, or the idea of perspective going back in space. That bush behind the middle tree, that's nicely done. It has a nice soft feel to it, and it shouldn't be the center of interest here. So I love the way you painted that the big tree in the center. The leaves are just so, I can feel the roundness, the volume of that.
Oh, thank you. And but you said that I should take out the building to the left of the Elks Monument, or to the right?
The one on the right, yeah.
Okay.
The little, yeah.
All
And
right.
then I'm gonna channel Clayton Beck for a moment, and I'm gonna say, maybe your sky holes on the tree on the left, maybe a little more random and not quite so, you know. This is how we all work. We start doing something and it works for us, and then we just keep doing it because our, you know, the left brain says you must get everything in order. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Robin.
Yes, thank you very much.
One of the hardest workers I know. Gosh. Okay. Yeah, you're always out there. It's inspiring. Is this Jill?
It is. Hey, Richard.
Hi, Jill. My good friend Jill.
Yes, we go way back.
Yeah, we do. We've been in shows together, and wow. Yeah. Yeah, I like this. I know you asked a question like, what am I supposed to do with this area over here?
Yeah.
And I thought about it, and I thought, well,
don't paint it. Cut it off.
I might crop it, or I'd put a figure in there, put a couple people in there.
Oh.
I know I'm always reluctant to do that too, but
yeah, that's a good idea. I tried putting shadows in, and it just looked atrocious. So.
Well, this has a really great feel to it, and it has, you know, I like the way that you haven't tried to noodle the buildings in the background. You let those go, and your perspective is pretty good too. And yeah, I was standing right there, and there were some people taking their masks off at that moment, so I had to move on. But there's another, you know, in the foreground. This is a trick, you know. This is one of those hints. Take it or leave it. You could have a sense of a shadow cast along the lower 10% of your painting down here. Maybe coming in from the, yeah, just coming in across the painting. That's another way of creating kind of variation, I guess.
Like kind of where the foliage is.
Well, on the other side, in your patio, just have the kind of a shadow, you know, a lighter value, transparent version, you know, of the stonework, just going across the stones and then going across the plants.
Cool, I never thought of that. Thank you.
Something to think about. Now, how did you do the stones? They seem to have some kind of texture that.
I did them in like 2 seconds at the very end. I'm like, I should probably put something around there. They actually existed, and I realized, you know, when I was almost done that I didn't have them in. So I just, you know, took a brush and went boom, boom, boom. It's a little dark.
Yeah, I know. I was standing there too. I'm holding my hand up to see if you cropped in another inch or two. If you took out that corner of the pond, I don't know. That it's your call, but.
So you think crop on the right or crop on the left?
Cropping on the right a little bit. I know you don't want to center your gazebo or whatever it is, but we're just talking. We're just talking.
We could, yes, I could absolutely. I could do all kinds of things. I'll crop that baby.
And then finally, I know I don't know what kind of day it was, but maybe you would want to consider the reflection of the gazebo in the pond too.
Yes, and there was also reflections of the buildings in the water. There's a photograph. I don't know if it's next or not. I included it. So who's ever manning or womaning?
I'm not manning the lifeboat here, so.
Nope, next one, the other way maybe. There we go.
Oh, sure.
Very crooked picture, but.
Yeah, but you did quite a bit of. You changed your original quite a bit, the original photograph, yeah. But there is definite reflections coming off of the gazebo.
Mm-hmm.
I would consider doing that to make this just give it more impact. I mean, your hero is the gazebo, as far as I'm concerned. It's not the flowers in the foreground.
That was my other question. Thank you.
In fact, as you move the flowers, let's say you were moving them into shade, as you move toward the left of the flower bed, they would begin to gray down a little bit. And so they cease to be the center of interest. Okay. I know you were probably looking at them. I'm looking at them now too, but my intuition says if you're gonna make that the center of interest, just go into it, go for it, and forget all the other stuff going on.
Yeah, so. I think I was attracted to the gazebo first, but then the flowers are in the foreground, so they would have more detail. So then I confused my own self.
Gazebo, yeah, gazebos are seductive, yeah, and sometimes haunting.
Turn the seatbelt sign on for a bit because it just got rumbly.
Yep.
But it never even got.
I looked at the.
Like at that scary level.
No,
somebody.
It looked like there were some clouds over Georgia. And then once you got over Georgia, it was pretty clear all the way to Chicago.
Whoever's on Fred's iPad.
Somebody.
Do you ever listen to people talk on an airplane? Do you ever focus in on something?
Where is that coming from?
I don't know, but it's pretty interesting.
Wow, I couldn't find the person.
Oh, we got hacked at school one day by some punkers. Were punking our critique, and we couldn't figure out where they were coming from, basically.
So Richard, what's your rule? I don't want to use the word rule, but what's your thought around putting people in a painting? Because like Jill, I see in your photo there weren't people here, but had there been, would you have included them? And then I kind of feel like when I make that choice, then the painting changes to becoming about the people and not so much about the space.
I've had that happen. One of Earl's assignments, I put in some people that I really didn't want to be there. I mean, this has a little bit of there's a little air of sadness in this painting because no one's there. It's like, okay, this is a metaphor for the pandemic, what we've been through. We have the circus, but nobody can come. So yeah, you do have to make that decision, and they better be good figures. And I talked to Earl about this once, and he said, well, I do all this homework and I have all this reference, so I have cars and I have people. So I can consult, I can bring them in at will. And I don't know, it's up to the individual, how you feel about that. But this is a little bit about loneliness right now. Or as Norman Rockwell used to say, when all else fails, put in a puppy.
Easy for him to say.
Thank you, Jill.
Thank you, Richard.
Good to see you.
You too.
Wow. Okay, we've got another brave soul who was in the park.
This is Muriel.
Muriel, you've got some beautiful stuff going on in this, and the perspective is working, and it's a really nice painting. I only have two little things I have to say here. Well, one of them I'm going to be real nitpicky with you because I know you're a good painter. There are a couple the light posts here. I don't know how they line up. They're sort of pointing in the direction slightly upward as you leave. Maybe they're going down park or downwind or whatever. But in terms of what you've done, we don't read them that way. If that post with the light in the front was a little bit higher, just slightly higher, it would fit perfectly with the rest of your perspective.
Okay.
And then we get to the grassy knoll. This is what always causes an issue for everybody. Causes an issue for me too, and that's you're creating a line across the bottom of your painting. What do you do about it? Anyone can weigh in here if they want. This is one of the picture problems we all have to solve. Now, you've done a nice job of painting this area. And the other thing, as it relates to the bottom, it also relates to the top. You've got this very heavy impasto in the sky, which logically, it seems to fit with, the brick and the mortar and everything. But when you get up to the sky, you're saying, well, she's changing her motif. She's going into some sort of expressionist mode here. Do you want to go that way? That's for you to answer, actually, at leisure, at your own leisure. But that's, in a nutshell, those are the two main issues with this painting.
So what
Could
you're
she
saying
put a
is,
shadow in the front? Could she put?
Yeah, she could. Yeah, she could have a shadow, running along the grass.
Okay.
Just pull that down a little bit. You could glaze that in, actually.
You mean it's too bright, competing with the?
Yeah, it is. It's competing with your hero.
That's what I was seeing. It's pretty spring color, very bright. But,
well, it's a gorgeous color. That's the problem. We deal with color. You notice on my list, color was way at the bottom. It was number 6 out of 7. Yeah. So first you get all these other elements going for you, and then you start to think about the color.
Another thing is, you want me to don't do the impasto for the sky?
It's risky if you're not doing an expressionistic style to your work.
Okay.
You see, you have the building underneath, which is really well painted. I mean, I'm just talking about tiny little details here, but it's got this sense of atmospheric perspective, and then boom, we're in the rocky road of what is this? This is the sky, and it's also it tends to pull us right out of the painting. Okay. It's just too bright. Now, I know everybody says, the sky is the brightest thing in your composition and so on, but sometimes you have to play with that rule a little bit.
Okay.
Your statue is just beautifully done. It breaks my heart for my eye to have to leave the painting so soon. Okay. Now, the last thing I'm going to say is that little, it's a vase or something on the memorial to the left of.
Yes.
I think if you put that in shadow, it would make more sense than having it partially in light. It competes a little bit with what's going on around it. Okay, that's everything nitpicky I can do for you here. And
that's very useful. Thank
I
you.
apologize if I've been.
No, don't.
Definitely, it's a really nice painting you've developed here.
I really appreciate it. Do you think I should get rid of the grass in the front too, or just pull down the concrete all the way down?
I'd pull the value, lower the value on what's going on. You might have, here's another thought. You might have a little, just a little slice. I call it a slice of pizza of the brighter grass, and then the rest would be in shadow. So you have this interesting diagonal cutting across that sort of picks up from the diagonal, behind the statue on the right. You want to mimic these shapes and forms if you can. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
It's a nice piece. Yes, this is an open door in, what size is this painting?
It's a 5x7.
Oh, it's little.
Yeah.
And well, I'm really liking the tree you painted. In fact, your foliage is quite beautifully done. I don't know what your intention is here. I just can't quite figure it out. It's an, you could come back at me and say, well, it's a metaphor for moving into the next life, the open door, the open window, where we've come from, where we're going, you could hit me with that, but that's sort of what it speaks to, as opposed to, oh, this is just my backyard and I left the door open. Think about your intention. Think about when you put that amount of time into the piece, where it's going to go. Now, one thing I really liked about your tree on the right is you've got these beautiful, reddish tones and this muted green kind of working together. That just told me a lot about the tree. Now, you could glaze down the lower half of the tree as you move down, and it would put that in shadow and would create a lot of drama. You've really got the perfect chance to do that with this pine tree on the right. And you can do that by glazing the color down. You could also glaze some of this on the left side too. So work on your brush work. I can see where, it's hard to control the brush at this size for any of us. And you've got some very nice passages going on here, like down around, the flower bed. That's working really well. So you just have to put these things together and say, okay, the next piece I do is about this. I'm going to put a door in a house, and it's going to be a red door, and it's going to have all of these. It's going to contrast against this beautiful tree. That's how you start building your narrative. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, this, I saw this earlier, Yelena. Wow, I saw the reference photo and then I saw the finished piece, and you're working in another realm from the rest of us. I don't know how to, if you're working toward perspective, you're not doing that, but you're creating another way of seeing in your work. And the brushwork is very expressive. This is an expressionist piece. It even goes beyond, it's not an impressionist painting of reality. It goes beyond that. So, and there's something going on in the sky too, which caused me a little trepidation. I was trying to figure out what is that symbolic of something? These are all things that you, pardon?
A little bit symbolic, and this is not final variant.
Oh, this is not final?
Another one is final.
Okay, so you're working on this, right?
No, you have this this version too, another version.
Yeah, I thought so. I thought this looked a little bit different, but I was afraid to say something. So, well,
Oh,
what do
Robin, do you want Robin to move one ahead on that so that you can see the finished one?
Okay. What is it you want to say with this piece?
This is some special island in Florida, where is some special island for nesting for all birds here.
Okay. I'm just going to deal with the elements. I'm not gonna comment on your style or anything beyond this, but you're looking at the balls in the lake, for example. This is another way of creating space that goes back. If the front ball was largest, the middle ball was a little bit smaller, and there was a ball in the distance, we would immediately have a sense of aerial perspective going back. Now, if the ball in the front was a stronger color, like green or orange or blue or whatever, that would bring that forward. What's happening here is you have a yellow ball here, but it's not really defined. And then you've got the red ball in the back. It's good that you have this trio of balls. That creates, that's something for my eye to lash onto, so to speak. But then I noticed you got a couple of ducks down here. And I'm thinking, is this the subject matter of her painting? And you know where I'm going to go with this. If this is the subject matter, it should be more toward the center of the painting somewhere. Not dead center, but somewhere so that it becomes the center of interest. And depending on how you painted these ducks, I don't know, I can't tell whether they're in the water or out of the water here, but if they were painted with thick paint brilliantly, they would be the center of interest in this painting.
Center this island. I think this way.
Okay.
Put it here. This island is center of interest.
Your island is the center of interest. Yeah. So what if you made your island the center of interest? If you just moved it forward in the painting?
Don't know. This is special island for all birds. That's why I put it as a center of interest.
Yeah, well, it's definitely an unusual place. There's, I want you just to consider trying different kinds of cropping in your painting. I've seen some of your other work too. You've done some wonderful street scenes, winter scenes, just very expressionistic. I want you to find a good book on perspective too, and begin reading that book. So that will give you a better grasp on how these structures in the background lay out in 3D space.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Nice. Well, let's, Mr. Whitney.
Actually, it's Sue Whitney.
Oh, Sue. Hello. Oh, there you are. Hi, Sue.
Hi. Sorry I couldn't be at the paint out with you, but I painted out at home.
Didn't miss a thing. This is a nice piece. It's you've got a lot of things going that, you know, I think Clayton referred to when he was talking about Carlson and, you know, making branches, kind of making them more ghost-like as they become narrower and so on. You've got some strong color here. You put a little violet in the back, you know, nothing, there's certain colors that just work, right? These triads, violet, green, and orange. You can hardly lose color-wise with that. I would make this little structure much stronger as an orange shape. I'd probably move it over a little bit, but I would, so it
Which-
isn't right
which
in the center.
Which
I don't
structure?
know. There's a tiny little something going on up
Okay,
there.
it's little weeds in the background.
Weeds. Oh, this looks like a little house or something.
It's
Between
just
those.
weeds and you know, stuff growing out of the water.
Okay, I would still go into your weeds and I would put a little, I would put a little accent of something.
Okay.
Either, yeah, I don't want to give you, don't want to tell you, but it's like, oh, say a little cobalt, a little bit lightened, or a strong orange, just a little spot of color back there. Just to say, I can do this. I'm a painter.
Okay.
And
something that draws the eye back there in that little area.
that's exactly right. And the only other thing I'm going to say here, because I'm really enjoying this, I'm enjoying the way the shadows are cast and everything. You know, if you're doing a pathway, if your shadow is too straight line, it's going to look like it's a concrete pathway. If your shadow dipped slightly and then came back up and went out, you would be telling me it's a dirt path or something.
Okay.
These are just details. I love your brushwork.
Thank
I
you.
really like what you've done here. Everyone keep in mind one other thing. Whenever you outline something, like all of these shapes in the tree are not outlined except the trunk of the tree on the right. Now that gives it a lot of, it makes it a very strong shape. But whenever you outline anything in this attempt at realism, it starts to flatten that shape. This is what I tell all my digital artists, because all they do is outline everything. So, but if you went a little bit lighter on the, you used a little bit of soft brush to turn that edge or something. I love everything else about this painting. It's just very nice. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate those inputs.
Oh, I saw it. Let's see,
This is we're done except for Kuhn's painting.
Is this Kuhn?
No, what we have to do is Robin's going to unshare and then I'll share, and
Okay.
it's little technical difficulties here. Okay, so now I'm going to share. Everybody see that?
Oh, Kuhn. Yes, I saw his piece earlier. He sent me it. Now, Kuhn, you always do everything in your painting. It's like you tackle the biggest challenges, and you say, I'm going to put everything in there. I'm going to put a dog and people, and I have to admire that, how you go about that. Now, that being said, oh, I love your sky too. It's just gorgeous. That sky is just gorgeous. Now, a few things about aerial perspective that I'm sure you already know, but if you wanted to push the temple back a little bit, you could go a little bit grayer and lighter on the side panel, the side plane on the left.
Okay, yeah.
And the building behind, you could maybe go a little softer with that too, because your trees over here are all very soft. And see, if you've got a tree going in front of the temple, so you're going from a hard edge to a very soft edge, I would think about how I was going to design that tree so that it would either go behind the edge of the temple, or it might have a little bit more definition in terms of the shape.
I see.
Because half of what we do is trying to adjust these planes and how things happen. The other thing is, with your tree, the tree's beautifully painted. I think I think I would lighten your shadows a little bit. It's
okay.
This goes back to the argument I was having with David LaFell when he said opaque shadows. Well, it can be opaque, but it can be a little bit lighter. I mean, a little bit grayer as you have that. You don't want it competing with your tree, which is so beautifully done. I kind of expected the shadow to be about at that level, that value level.
Okay.
And that's it. I just think, man, I don't know how I can keep up with Kuhn. He goes in and he paints the whole 9 yards, and he's out of there. And I'm just starting to lay my palette out, and he's done, and boom. So anyway, thank you, Kuhn.
Thank you very much, Richard.
That's the last painting.
Phew.
And that was a great critique.
I hope I didn't offend everybody.
Fabulous. It was a fabulous critique.
It was. Thank
really
you.
helpful.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was my pleasure. And I'm out there like everybody else. I'm dealing with all of these things every week or whenever I go out. Some of you are much better soldiers than I am. We'll see if it's raining on Saturday. Several people live in the place we're going to paint, Edgewater Beach, and they want to come out and see everybody. So I'm promoting the group, so that should be fun.
You know, one comment about painting there on Saturday is that one of the reasons that we made this paint out there is that we do have in August, will be part of a paint out where they want paintings of the building. So, and they're going to be putting them in their windows. So make sure that, you know, this time you are thinking of the building as a character or as, but that's what people are looking for.
Good advice. Yeah.
And Mary, we should just say that the address is just sort of like the meeting place, but people might be moving much further away to get different views of the building.
Yeah, you might even want to paint over on Foster Beach. I saw that we have a restroom as over on Bryn Mawr, but you know, over on Foster Beach, I think that the building should be open. There.
Yeah, it's formidable. I remember painting the Baha'i Temple a couple of years ago with everybody, and I moved across the street, then down the street, and I kept moving farther and because I couldn't get a good view of it. So. Yeah,
you might want to be in the harbor, the Evanston Harbor over the Wilmette Harbor over there to get the real view. So
yeah.
I'm cutting in. Osterman Beach is right over there. It's just east of the building and slightly north, and that also might have a bathroom. Osterman Beach. It's a little bit north of Foster Beach.
And you can see the pink building from there.
Sure.
Now, before I go, I just want to share one image with you. It's an Edgar Payne painting of his boats. Let's see if we can get this. Okay, so this is, I don't know if you would consider this an en plein air painting, but it has a lot of the elements, and we all love his work, of course. And there's a sense of atmospheric perspective going back. He's paid a great deal of attention to how those shapes, the values are colored, are shaded. And when you look at the water, there isn't all that much that's happening. He's working with a palette knife, I guess. And he's working with these contrasting colors. You know, here we go again, green, blue, orange. There's a very famous painter of the Apache, Howard Turpning. I don't know if you know his name. He lives in Tucson. He's 94 years old. And someone told me once, every painting he has a little bit of red, yellow, and blue. And those are the primary colors. And that is something his collector base has come to look for. I mean, whatever it takes, right, folks? So anyway, enjoy your week. That's all I have for you.
Thank you, Richard.
And thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
All right.